Welcome to today's live stream on five steps to crack NPAT. All right. So today's session is all about NPAT. Well, NPAT is one of the most important entrance tests that we have for BBA aspirants, and therefore we are doing this session on five steps to crack NPAT. Okay, and the agenda is going to be very simple. We'll have the last year's paper pattern that you should know. So you should know what is the paper pattern. We'll discuss the kind of questions that have come in the previous years, the kind of cutoffs that you need to clear the entrance test and get an admission into NMIMS. And then we will discuss the preparation strategy for various subjects like QA, VA, and LR. And finally, what should be your strategy during the test? All right. So I hope you find this session to be value adding in your preparation, and hoping that you are able to kind of implement that in your preparation as well. All right, so let's get going, guys. The paper pattern of NPAT. So first of all, the NPAT paper pattern. The NPAT paper pattern is fairly straightforward. There are three sections: QA, VA, and LR. So QA is quantitative aptitude, which is maths; logical reasoning, which is LR; and verbal ability and verbal reasoning, that is VA and VR. Okay, so there are these three sections: maths, logic, and English. Generally, in the paper, these sections appear in this same order. Okay. However, as per last year, there were no restrictions in the movement of the paper. So you can choose which section to attempt first, which section to attempt later. So for these 120 questions, you only have 100 minutes. But so you'll see 120 questions, 100 minutes. So you have only 50 seconds per question. However, the good thing is that the cutoffs generally, so cutoffs, the scores are never released, but these are all estimated cutoffs based on the students who took the test and cleared the exam. They tell us that they attempted these many questions, or they could have expected this kind of a score. So the scores are never released by NMIMS. They only release the ranks. All right. So whatever numbers or scores or attempts we discuss are primarily the number of attempts, whatever students have told us as as per their judgment. It's not an accurate number. We can't be accurate here because NMIMS does not release the scores. All right. But the good thing is 120 questions in 100 minutes, but there's no negative marking. And if you look at the number of attempts, you need to get around 85 attempts, because if you get 85, 90 attempts, genuine attempts, okay, these are not attempts where you randomly mark an answer because there's no negative marking. When we say number of attempts, we mean the questions that you solved and got an answer to. So if you are genuinely getting 85 to 90 questions correct, chances are high that you'll clear the entrance and get into your college of choice, because there's no sectional cutoff. Also, there's no sectional time limit, so you can choose your total score across the three sections. And there are 3 attempts from January to May, and these dates are generally this is the duration that is taken by NPAT for the past 2 years. 2025 dates are not yet announced, so therefore we can't say anything for certainty. However, we expect this year also the exam to happen in the same window of January to May, between which you can book a slot of your choice on any 3 dates and take the test. So generally most students take the test after April, when the board exams are over. Okay. And as I was saying, a good score is around 70, 75. Around 75 would be a very good score to get one of the top courses in NMIMS Mumbai, right? So NPAT is the entrance test for NMIMS, and for NPAT, you need to score around 75 to get a college or course of your choice in NMIMS Mumbai. And as I was saying, with around 80, 85 attempts and genuine accuracy, you can expect to clear the cutoffs. Okay. Now, only key thing over here is, the time management and all those things. For example, The verbal ability can be very high scoring. Logical reasoning, moderately high scoring. With the amount of time, if you give it time, you can score well. But the QA section in NMIMS or NPAT is quite challenging. And that is why you'll see for QA, I've put the good attempts at the least number, that is 20 to 25. And I'm not even giving QA a very high amount of time, because generally the questions in NPAT in quant can be a little time consuming. So because the time is very limited, generally the strategy in NPAT is to solve the easiest questions and the easiest sections first. All right. So with this understanding, we'll move on to the next part, that is the preparation strategy or the preparation plan that you should have for each and every section. Okay. So this is the paper pattern that, and the cutoff that you are looking for. Okay. And to reach such levels, what are the subjects that you should study, or what are the topics that you should study or focus on in each of the sections is what we will discuss next. Okay. So for example, what should be your preparation plan for QA? All right. Now, when I speak about preparation plan for QA, I am not speaking with a time bound, approach right now. The preparation from November to or December to May of next year, we'll discuss at the end. However, when I say preparation plan for QA, we will majorly discuss what are the key areas which are tested and what should be your general strategy in the QA section. So as we had seen in the paper pattern slide, ideally you should plan to attempt around 20 to 25 questions in less than 35 minutes. There are some easy questions also, some moderately difficult questions also, and some very difficult questions also. Generally, students who don't do well in NPAT, or rather, who aim to score really well, who prepared well, but end up doing not so great in the NPAT exam, is majorly because they end up wasting a lot of time in difficult questions of NPAT, or rather difficult questions of QA. Therefore, if one has this understanding that NPAT actually has 10, 12 very difficult questions, one has to have that mindset or the preparation to leave those questions, right? Because time is very limited. If you spend a lot of time solving difficult questions, you could end up wasting a lot of time in a single question, and you could end up losing time for the easy questions later. Okay. Now that's why you need to learn the art of leaving questions, about which I'll discuss in a while. Okay. So when you prepare, you identify some question types, you solve some questions in your practice. So definitely you are familiar with some questions, or there are direct questions also that come in the NPAT. Generally, the questions about which you are familiar or straightforward should be attempted. If there's a tricky question or a lengthy question which the construct of which is not very familiar, you should generally skip that question. Okay. Now you might feel that QA is so challenging, and maybe if you're someone who's scared of maths, maybe you'd be thinking that you should not be doing QA at all. However, there is a good news for you. The good part here is that the questions in NPAT are very predictable. That is, the question types keep on repeating. So if you just go through the past year papers and you identify the difficult or the lengthy questions that come in the exam, and you work on those questions repeatedly and identify tricks to solve those questions faster, you can actually overcome, you can actually improve your number of attempts in QA section significantly. Therefore, if someone has to do well in NPAT, solving past year papers is essential to develop tricks for questions which come repeatedly every year. Okay, there are there are certain question types which come almost every year, and one has to have that familiarity with those question types, and you should know whether if a question of that type comes in your paper, whether you should attempt that or not. Okay. And even for the lengthy questions, generally it is possible to develop those tricks which can help you solve those questions faster. All right. So basically the most important chapter, the most important questions that you can have in QA, or the chapters that you have the most questions from, are these. So trigonometry, one of the topics which a lot of students are really scared of. Maybe they dread the trigonometry chapter the most, and there are quite a few lengthy questions from this chapter. However, as I told you earlier, if you identify tricks like substitutions or using options, smart tricks can help you solve such questions really fast. Then set theory and Venn diagram based questions, a lot of questions. Sometimes you get 7-8 questions from this single chapter, set theory. Sequences and series, where you have AP, GP, and some other sequences also. Functions, there are typical questions which come from function. Probability, generally not so many questions. Probability is a subset of set theory. So in probability also there are a lot of questions which are related to set theory. Statistics, deviations, mean, median, mode, such topics are very frequently tested, or tested in a lot of questions of NPAT. Moving on, board mass and fractions and HCF LCM, these seem to be very basic topics. Okay, converting recurring decimal numbers to fractions and board mass type questions. So these are also tested a lot in NPAT. These questions are very easy chapters, but they can be very lengthy. However, if one has quick tricks to convert recurring decimals to fractions and such things in mind, one can handle some of these questions also. The other thing, the key point, one of the key points that one has to note is data interpretation. Data interpretation earlier used to be a part of the LR section of NPAT. But last year, there were 10 to 12 questions of data interpretation in the QA section of NPAT. So one has to have a good strategy for data interpretation also. See, data interpretation sets have some data provided, and with that data, there are some 4 questions or 5 questions attached. So if one has done their calculations well, and one has understood the art of percentages, ratios well, data interpretation, if you are able to solve a set of data interpretation questions in 5-6 minutes, it could give you 4 questions together in a set. So therefore you could score 4 marks in 5 to 6 minutes. And you can see the time limit that we've set for ourselves. The ideal strategy for QA is that you have to solve 20 to 25 questions, and even then you can clear the NPAT exam in 30-35 minutes. So 20 to 25 questions of QA in 30 to 35 minutes, which means if there are 12 questions of data interpretation and you are able to solve 4 or 8 and leave the difficult ones, you would be kind of in line with your ideal strategy. Okay, and there are 12 questions of data interpretation. If you leave all the questions of data interpretation in QA section because of the questions being lengthy or something, and then there are lengthy questions from trigonometry, statistics, or functions, if you leave those questions also, then generally it will become very difficult for you to score the 20 or 25 questions that you wish to score in the QA section. Therefore, you should practice data interpretation a lot, work on your percentages, ratios, and quick calculation tricks, and that would help you a lot in data interpretation. Further, there are common topics like equations and arithmetic, like simple and compound interest, profit loss, ratio, proportion, averages, time, speed, distance, time, and work, that are generally tested in the QA section. One area which is less tested is the geometry section. So geometry is something which is not really tested so much in the NPAT paper. So if you are aiming to prepare for QA for NPAT, geometry is an area that you can do with a lesser priority. And similarly, the first set of topics that I've shown, trigonometry, set theory, sequence series, functions, probability, statistics, board mass, HCF, LCM, and data interpretation, these topics can be given a slightly higher priority because you get a lot of questions from these areas. Almost 60% of the paper would be from the first half and data interpretation put together, 60-70%. Okay, so that's a huge proportion of paper coming from limited number of 7-8 topics. All right, and as I was telling you, develop the art of leaving questions. Now this is something which sounds very easy to do but requires a lot of practice. Okay, so when you're preparing for QA, one thing is to practice, the other thing is to practice with a timer. That is, you need to do a timed testing of your concepts or of your chapters. Only then you will be able to develop that habit of leaving questions that are lengthy or difficult. Okay, so the art of leaving or difficult selecting a question is very simple. At IMS, we commonly call it ABC technique, or A stands for abhi karo. Generally questions that can be that you see the question, the familiar, you're familiar with the question structure, and you are able to estimate that you would be able to solve this question within a minute or within 1.5 minutes or maximum say 2 minutes, but you are sure it's not a very lengthy or a tricky question, so you do it right away. So when you come to that question number 3 and you are reading a question and you identify, okay, you know the method to do this and you know that it is not a lengthy question that will take more than 2 minutes, you do it right away. Okay, but say you go to question number 5 and you realize that question is a little lengthy, or maybe you're not very familiar with the question type. You think you can do it, but you're not very familiar, you're not very confident, so you mark such a question for later and come back to it only if you are left time at the end. Why waste time on a question where you're not confident or which is a very lengthy question? And similarly, there are some questions where you have no clue what to do, or you kind of identify that it will take at least 3 or 4 or 5 minutes to solve that question, it's very lengthy. Such questions should be rejected right away. Okay, however, do you all know that there is no negative marking in NPAT? So many students tell me, sir, why chhod do, at least we can randomly mark. So yes, you randomly mark that question, but you don't waste time in solving that question, okay, or coming to the right answer. Just randomly mark and go ahead the questions which are chhod do type. Okay, acha. Now, how much time should you take in decision making? Whether you should solve it now or later or leave the question completely. How much time should you kind of invest in this decision making? So this decision making should not take more than 30 seconds. In the first 30 seconds, when you look at a question, you read the question, and while reading you are working something in the background or identifying what would be the method or the formula applicable over here. And in the first 30 or 45 seconds you identify ki, Acha, this question I'll not be able to solve in the limited time, I'll go ahead. Okay, sometimes some questions you'll be able to leave even in 10-15 seconds, but I'm saying 30 seconds or 40 seconds should be the maximum time that you should spend on a single question just to identify whether you are solving it or not. Okay, and yes, once you decide that you have to solve it, so you should be done with it within the next 1.5 minutes. So QA requires a lot of practice, not just of the concepts and the tricks, but also of the timer. You need to be very alert about the time that you're taking for each question. Okay, so that's about your preparation for QA. My overall suggestion for QA is that one thing is to solve a class exercise and a practice exercise, but you should also solve the topic wise tests and have a timed approach towards concepts and questions. Okay, that will help you a lot in your NPAT preparation. Okay, moving on further, what should be a preparation plan for LR? Now the LR section, again, LR section generally is the second section in the paper. I didn't mention about the order, we'll discuss that at the end, so let's not get into the details that which is the first, second, third. But yeah, preparation plan for LR. Now LR has almost all the common topics, but in NPAT, the LR section has analytical reasoning as well as verbal reasoning topics. Okay, so the ideal strategy is to identify the 32 questions that you can solve in less than 45 minutes. Few questions can be lengthy, like they can be questions based on arrangements. There are 8 friends sitting in a row and there are very few clues given, and can be a little lengthy also. Such questions, if the number of questions attached to to an LR question is not too many and it's a lengthy set, try to avoid that. Okay, prepare for all the common topics and question types from analytical and verbal reasoning. So there's no you don't have to be selective here, but there are a few areas which are tested intensively or extensively. So those topics, again, if you check the past year papers, you'll identify those question types. You should be prepared for those questions very well. I'll give you a list, a few of them I'll be able to name. Like, you have questions on groups and conditionalities, seating arrangements, sequential input and output. These are all the areas, these are all the chapters which you have from analytical reasoning, the mathematical type of reasoning. You are able to get to a single answer and such things. However, in NPAT, the most scoring LR questions would actually be from the verbal reasoning part. Okay, because verbal reasoning does not require a lot of solving. So when you look at a verbal reasoning question and you have to identify what would be the right conclusion or what would be the right course of action, cause and effect, etc., such questions don't require a lot of solving, and that's why can be a little uh, easy on the time, and therefore should be prepared well. One really different area, or one area which is quite different from the other exams, is visual reasoning. Now there is visual reasoning in LR of NPAT. Visual reasoning, you would have, if you would have studied, you would know what is visual reasoning. That there is a there are some images given to you, and you are asked to identify what would be the next image, or such kind of questions, or analogy, or odd man out in visual reasoning. But in NPAT, you have visual reasoning based on top view, front view, or paper folding and such things. So if you have studied visual reasoning, you would have definitely come across these chapters. But I would strongly suggest that you give good attention to visual reasoning. That is an area which is tested a lot. And if someone is not prepared for that chapter well, you can be a little those are high easy scoring questions, and you can kind of be uh, can get a setback if you're not well prepared in that chapter. Okay, or if you're not aware of a few things in that chapter. So prepare well for visual reasoning. Another question type that is asked a lot is data sufficiency and data comparison. Now data sufficiency is not a new concept as such. It uses the concepts of maths and logical reasoning, but it is a different question type wherein you're given some data and you have to check how much data is sufficient to answer a certain question. So to be able to answer this question well, you have to be very conceptually very strong. Therefore practice data sufficiency well, and know what kind of questions you are good at and what kind of questions you're not good at, to be able to make that decision of attempting or leaving a question. Okay, all right, so these are the top areas that need to be worked in the LR section. Now as far as the next section is concerned, that is verbal ability. So verbal ability is again very common and very similar to any other entrance test. The areas are also common, and the topics that are tested are also very common. The level of difficulty is also quite easy to moderate, so you can score really high in your paper. Now as you would have seen, we were aiming to score 72 plus or 75, around 75 for for a good seat in one of the top courses of NMIMS Mumbai. Out of which, if someone who's very good at verbal sometimes can score even 35 plus. Okay, so that's the game changing nature of VA. If you're not good at VA you're losing out on very easy marks. So if you're not good at VA, start working hard very right away. There's no time that you can waste, because if you're looking to crack NPAT and you're not strong at VA, in fact not just NPAT, any other BBA or IPM entrance, if you're aiming, your verbal has to be on point. Okay, because without scoring high in the VA section, generally it becomes very challenging for someone to score well in the overall paper. Okay, so there are you'll easily be able to attempt around 35 to 40 questions in 20 to 25 minutes. The common topics are the ones which you regularly have: reading comprehensions, vocabulary based questions, fill in the blanks, grammar, spotting the error, and such things. So all the question types are really common. One question type which you may not come across a lot in most exams is parajumbles and paracompletion. So that you can work on. This is slightly based on reasoning concepts of verbal ability. So parajumbles and paracompletion is also tested in your VA, and that can be really scoring. It's not that difficult in the NPAT paper. Okay, so if you have a very good reading speed and your vocabulary is good, with the grammar rules and such things, you'll be able to ace all the areas tested in the verbal ability section. I would strongly recommend that out of all the three sections, if you have to prioritize any one section to prepare the best, that has to be the verbal ability section. At the same time, keep in mind the QA and the LR sections would be required to take you beyond 75. Okay, so therefore your aim should be that you kind of excel in VA and be very choosy in the QA and LR sections, because in LR and QA sections you have the option of leaving questions which are lengthy. Here all questions are generally on the easier side. All right, so as I have mentioned here, vocabulary and reading speed cannot be developed in a month. So you have 6 months now. Even if you have board exams in between, please try to take out 15 to 20 minutes for verbal ability only every day. Start working on vocabulary and reading speed. Read one article, identify 4 or 5 new words, and start working on reading speed and vocabulary right away. All right, so that should be your preparation plan for verbal ability. And now if we move on towards the overall preparation strategy and the strategy during the NPAT test, like when you go into the NPAT exam, what should be your overall strategy while attempting the paper, is what we will discuss in this step. Okay, so overall preparation strategy from December to May. Now ideally, this is, see, I can't there'll be a lot of different students who will be watching these videos. Some students who have not yet started their preparation, some students who would have completed their preparation by now, some students who would aim to do their preparation after board exams. Well, it is possible to prepare after board exams also, but in my opinion, the minimum time limit, okay, if you find any area challenging, this time could go higher also, but the minimum time that you need to take out for preparation would be 250 hours. Okay, and while it would be very easy to say that you will study 8 hours a day for 30 days and finish off your task of 250 hours, it's not that simple. Okay, so someone who thinks they can do it in 1 month, it's very challenging. Someone who's sincere can do it in 2 months, is what I believe. 1.5 or 2 months is a good time to do this. Okay, however, there are a lot of exams and things which keep on happening after the board exams also. So if one has the time right now, they should at least try and take out 1 hour per day, or at least in the January or December month, right? So basically, till you have your board exams coming up, at least you can take out 15 to 20 minutes per day for vocabulary and reading, and overall you can take out 1 to 2 hours per day in December and Jan. Maybe in December you have prelims, you might not have the time to take out 2 hours per day, or maybe sometimes 1 hour per day, but wherever and whenever you can take out. If you don't have any prelims going on or exams going on, students should work on taking out some time for BBA preparation, so that you are not completely off track when you resume after board exams. If you just work 1 hour per day for the next 60 days, your at least 60 days of work is done, and you just have to do 190 hours in a month, which is quite possible. And these 250 hours include the class timing also. So suppose you are attending any classes or preparing through any institute, and they are also conducting so basically concept learning involves the classes that they're taking, that time has also been included here. So someone who's taking a coaching from someone, the classes would also have to be attended and self study. The total time is 250 hours. Someone who does not take basically someone who's not taking classes generally would have to prepare some chapters on their own. Sometimes they could take a little longer also for concept learning, because basically the professional teachers would have a structure in place while teaching. If you're preparing on your own, maybe you could increase the time to 300 hours also. Okay, your concept learning would take a little longer, right? So don't completely neglect your IPM BBA preparation. At least take out 1 hour per day even during these 2 months, so that you're completing at least 10%, 20% of your syllabus before board exams. And if you are someone who has already done the preparation, you can reinforce your concepts now and work on mock tests and such things after board exams. Those who haven't started will have to study 7-8 hours per day after board exams. Okay, this is after board exams. Please note, this is after boards. So this is not something which I mean, which I'm saying right now. This is basically after board exams. Okay. So just one thing, 1 second. So 7 to 8 hours after board exams. And I don't think it is definitely possible, but sometimes when you're exhausted or you're tired, sometimes it would take a little it would take a little longer, or you might not be able to sustain 7 to 8 hours of studies every single day. If you have that practice, I would really appreciate that. Okay. And it is definitely possible because a lot of students do it uh, as well. It's just that out of those students, many are able to crack, many are many are also not able to crack. And the most important part is taking the mock tests. So when you go into the NPAT paper, we'll discuss the NPAT test taking strategy next slide. For that, you'll have to actually take a lot of mock tests and try different strategies to identify what works the best for you. So what would you try? So these are the and one more important thing. You have a window of January to May. Generally, don't plan all your attempts in the last 15 days of May. It can get it can get really tight at the end. At least take one attempt in April to get that familiarity with the paper. And even if you're done, if you prepared, just completed your preparation, just taken one mock, at least take one attempt in April end at least, so that you know what kind of questions are coming actually in the NPAT exam. What is the environment there, how it feels in an actual exam scenario. All those things would come, would help you a lot in your second and the third attempt. Okay. Lastly, the NPAT test strategy. You have only 100 minutes for 120 questions, that is 50 seconds per question. But you're not attempting all 120 questions. You'll genuinely try to attempt only 80 to 85 or 90 questions maximum. The remaining are going to be random bluffs, right? Because there's no negative marking. Okay. So how do you split those 85 to 90, or how do you achieve this 85 to 90 attempts? So time management is very important, and order of sections is essential. Choose the right set of orders. Ideally, I suggest that you kind of keep your most scoring area first. And for most students, the biggest scoring area is verbal ability. In NPAT, verbal ability level is much lower as compared to QA. So even if maths is your stronger area, you can just take one mock test and you'll know which area of NPAT is the more scoring one for you. So go for the most scoring sections first. And the most common strategy is that first you go for VA. Make 35 attempts in 20 minutes and expect 32 marks over there. So if you're able to achieve this kind of a accuracy in verbal ability, you're doing great. Then you go to LR. Try 32 attempts in 40-45 minutes. Try to expect around 30 correct. If you're able to get this much in the first 20 plus 45-65 minutes, you've already reached close to 60 marks. To cross that 75 barrier, now you are only 15-20 away from that barrier, and that you have to achieve in your QA section. So in the QA section, you will try to attempt 20 to 25 questions in 35 minutes and try to get around 17 to 20 correct. And if you go about it this way, it's very simple to kind of crack the NPAT and get into NMIMS Mumbai campus. Okay. Now the important thing is, in LR and QA sections, as we had discussed earlier, questions which are taking more than 2 minutes per question should be skipped. In verbal ability, you almost have to attempt all questions, but in LR section, LR and quant section, you should ideally be very selective in choosing your questions. And that actually is one of the key, points in your success in NPAT. Lastly, the most important part, as I had mentioned in the previous slide also, you should at least practice 7 to 8 mock tests to experiment and find your best strategy. Which chapter works for you, which chapter does not work for you, where do you take most time, where you make most mistakes. All this identification will happen only when you take the actual when you take the mock tests which are similar to the actual NPAT pattern, right? And I think if you just follow this, complete your preparation, chapter level practice, then practice exercise, then chapter level tests. So as you would have seen over here in the previous slide, learning has to be concept learning, then practice. So you study a chapter, you understand the concepts, then you practice questions, and then you do a timed testing. This is the most important part over here. Okay, if you look at the if you're practicing for NPAT, timed practice is the most important. Okay, so that only then you'll be able to identify which question works the best for you, which question is time consuming, which question is not so time consuming. Okay, so I hope today's session was helpful in helping you understand how you should go about your preparation. If you want any help from IMS has a lot of batches and self-learning programs and mock test series. You can scan the QR code and visit our website. I'll now open the forum for questions and answers. So if you have any questions, you can post the questions in the chat, and I'll try to answer the questions live. Okay. So Arav and Heth have asked if the paper is the best of 3 attempts or any one attempt. Yes, it is the best of 3 attempts. It is not just the first attempt or any other attempt. Okay. Any other question? I'll be waiting. I'll be checking the chat here, the YouTube chat. So you can tell me if you have any questions. All right. I'll wait for a few minutes more, and then maybe if there are no more questions, I think I'll take your leave then. So any questions, anyone? You can use the YouTube chat. Ara, okay. So one question is, will slots be available? Generally, I believe you are asking, will slots be available at May end? The answer is yes. Slots would be available in May end, but not so many that you are able to take all 3 attempts in May end itself. So plan your slots accordingly. Arav got an AIR 25 in NPAT proctored for IMS without doing module 5. Do you think I can crack NPAT if I do prep after boards? Well, Arav, if you've got an AIR 25, clearly, the module, you wouldn't have skipped all the module 5 chapters completely. Maybe it could be that you aced the other areas well. And also remember one thing, Arav, at this point, many students have not yet completed their preparation. So you are kind of AIR 25 among the students at their current level of preparation. When they complete their preparation, so they are continuously preparing. Everyone else is preparing little bit at least. Even if they are in the 12th, they have some prelims. Some of them would have done their boards preparation earlier, so they would be preparing for NPAT or BBA now. So don't leave your preparation completely. As I told you, try to take out 1 hour per day in January and December. I think that should help you maintain your level. And after board exams, then you can aim to kind of capitalize on that and even rise higher, right? But it will not be the best strategy that you leave everything to post boards. It is good to stay in touch with things. Any other questions, anyone? Well, Venkat, there are 800 plus seats for BBA, and if you consider BBA, BSc Economics, BSc Finance, there are 300 seats in BSc Finance, 300 seats in BCom Honors, around 180 seats in BSc Economics. So across all programs, if you look at it, there are more than 1500 seats in NMIMS Mumbai alone. If you have any other questions related to NPAT or NMIMS, I'll be able to handle those here. NMIMS also has BBA in marketing. Yes, Arav, they have, but that is not the flagship program. That is the School of Family Business and Entrepreneurship. And that program generally does not demand a very high cutoff. More importantly, there it's more based on, so they also take some interviews for that program. It used to be called BBMM earlier. Now it is called BBA in marketing. But it is not the NMIMS School of Commerce that offers it. It is the NMIMS School of Family Business and Entrepreneurship that offers this program. So generally the reputation that NMIMS BBA would have would not be the same for NMIMS BBA in marketing. The family business program would not have the same reputation in the market as compared to the NMS School of Commerce BBA. All right. I think most questions are done. So with that, I'll take your leave. Thank you very much for everyone who joined the program, the live stream, and I hope you found the session to be helpful. Thank you very much for joining, and hope to see you again for such new videos. Subscribe to our channel and explore IMS programs. Thank you very much.